6, 5, 4. Oh, let's just go.
2, 1. Ignition.
Ron Howard is one of the most successful Hollywood directors working today. His stable of movies include Cocoon, Splash, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and last year's Oscar champion, A Beautiful Mind. These films, produced with partner Brian Grazer, have grossed over $2.5 billion worldwide. Their 1995 suspense drama, Apollo 13, received 9 Oscar nominations. It won 2. This month, it returns to the big screen in IMAX format. This is the first live-action picture to be digitally remastered for giant IMAX screen projection. Ron Howard joins me with Jim Lovell. I am pleased to have them. Jim was selected as an astronaut in 1962. He has logged more than 5,000 hours of flying time, more than 3,500 hours in jet aircraft. During Apollo 13, he served as spacecraft commander. He piloted Gemini 7, commanded Gemini 12, and orbited the moon on Apollo 8. He is the first man to journey to the moon twice. To top that off, the Oscar-winning actor Tom Hanks played Captain Lovell in Howard's film. I'm pleased to have them both here. What a nice introduction by me.
Well, yes, it certainly was. Can we box that up and put it in a time capsule or something?
Did I tell you anything about him you didn't know?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did.
Round and round
really
and
something.
round.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the Oscar.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Just a director, huh?
Yeah, well, that was a thrilling.
Walk up
thrilling
there
night.
and say,
that was great. And then a moment later, Mel Gibson handed me my Oscar. Then we walked off, and a moment later, Tom Hanks announces Best Picture, which means an Oscar for Brian and myself. It was just thrilling and really fantastic that Tom was there to share that moment with us. It was great.
You two pretty close?
Yeah, and also Tom and Brian have been, sort of surfing buddies over the years on top of everything else. So it just it felt great. It was a terrific night.
Yeah, people were waiting for you to get one because they thought you'd been cranking out one good movie after another.
Well,
and
thanks.
And we were waiting to see which movie would be the one
I
that...
should have got one 6 years ago.
I know you did. Apollo 13. So did I, actually.
Well, it's a great tradition, and look, it's one. I've always been a fan of the Oscars, and on the one hand, I was proud of the fact that without winning an Oscar, I was able to accomplish everything that I really wanted to in terms of working with people I wanted to work with, tell stories that I was interested in, get the support from the studio system that I needed to make the films the way I wanted to make them without the Oscar. So it wasn't like I felt I needed it on a career level, but it's a fun tradition, it's great, and I'm glad I had that moment, as a result of that film.
If I had to tell you that of all the movies you're about to make, and I listed them at the beginning of your career, and I said, A Beautiful Mind, the story of a professor who's schizophrenic, would not be the one that you think might have done it for you.
Well, I am not good at predicting those things. I am also not good at predicting the commerciality of the film.
This was not a Hollywood movie.
Not at all. And you've got to give Universal and then DreamWorks, who came on board, a lot of credit for backing that movie and believing in it, because it's not a formulaic picture by any stretch of the imagination, and we approached it in a very adult, kind of sophisticated way, and audiences embraced it around the world. I mean, that's thrilling that the critics were with us and that the Academy voted for us, but also really rather surprising that it was as commercial as it turned out to be.
Have you seen this movie, Apollo 13, in IMAX?
I saw it about 3 weeks ago.
And what's it like?
Well, it's fantastic because, I didn't have the...
You've had the 3 experiences. You were up there, you've seen it in the movie,
well,
now
Ron
you
worked
see it in
on it,
IMAX.
so he knew, he watched it, being produced. I hadn't seen the regular Apollo 13 for some time.
Right.
We have it on DVD and things like that, but, after a while, we don't show it anymore. And suddenly I go to the IMAX theater.
Oh, no, I've seen you at the supermarket say, hey, come over here and watch me.
Bring my friends in.
Come on in. Yeah.
And we sat there.
See what a great guy I am.
In Chicago, the fellow who had the IMAX theater there said, would you like to see have a private showing? I said, the IMAX theater Apollo 13? He said, yes. And I said, well, fine. Can I bring my family? He said, oh, sure, bring your family. I said, anybody else coming? He says, no. I said, well, how many seats does that place hold? And he said, 400. I said, can I invite some friends? And so we had about 152 people.
Oh, that's
there.
great.
And this is the first time I saw it. So for me, it was almost a complete different movie where you're really in the scenes itself. And of course, I can relate kind of nicely. I can almost put myself into Hanks' spot there and see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But so for me, it was especially thrilling.
But tell us what IMAX is.
Well, IMAX is this large screen format, and 70 millimeter. They project it this way, so you've got more top and bottom.
Right.
And it's huge, tremendous sound system. Always, the stadium seating. And they generally show
It's like stadium seating.
Yeah, instead of it's this way, like Coliseum seating. Not a bad seat in the house.
Right.
Tremendous sound systems, as I said, and the idea of an IMAX movie is to just sort of immerse you in a world. And they do a lot of nature films. They do historical films, great films about the Grand Canyon. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time.
Climbing Mount Everest.
Climbing Mount Everest. Great films. I've seen a number of them. Of course, as a father of a bunch of teenagers, over the years I've always gone, and I've always been blown away, and always thought, wouldn't it be great to follow a narrative line in that format? Wouldn't it be great to shoot something for IMAX? And that opportunity never really presented itself. I never had the right idea, but when they came to us through Michael Rosenberg, our president at Imagine, who'd been talking to the IMAX folks, and Michael and the IMAX gang said, we'd like to create a test. We have a new software which allows us to digitize the movie and blow it up and take out the grain, which means we can take the 35 millimeter negative and make it as rich a quality and as textured and detailed as if we shot it with the IMAX cameras, which are huge and really preclude you from making a dramatic movie and doing camera movement and making a sort of a contemporary cinematic experience, and I was elated by that, but also rather guarded, because if I saw the test and it wasn't up to snuff, I knew the studio would be excited. It might represent a commercial opportunity for the film, but Apollo 13 is one of my cherished babies, and I really was not going to let it, go out there and be just a sort of a marketing gimmick, but that was not a concern. When I saw the test, I was completely blown away. So was Brian. And in fact, I remember thinking to myself as I was walking out, I'd always dreamed about making an IMAX movie. Who knew I'd already made one? Yeah. It is a perfect story for that format. The action scenes are more exciting, and the suspense is, it's all more compelling.
So the
and vivid.
software works.
Oh, the software is spectacular, Charlie. I mean, it's incredible what it's as a movie lover, this is a tremendous breakthrough. It's just great, and I'm thrilled that the initial outing, it turns out to be Apollo 13. It's the other thing that surprised me. I love directing actors. That's primarily that's what I love to do, and if I had a concern, it was that the movie, which has a lot of close-ups, because I really shot it as a human interest story,
right.
As a character drama. I was afraid that the close-ups would overpower on that huge screen. And in fact, if there was a sort of an IMAX director's handbook, big close-ups would sort of be in the no-no section. Yeah, right. When I was watching the test and they get to this close-up of Kathleen Quinlan looking up as the rocket launches, it's always been a favorite shot of mine. But you could see into her soul even more so. I mean, the eyes, every nuance of these performances, which are very nuanced because they're all playing characters who are kind of understated in that astronaut kind of way. It's a richer drama in this format.
All right, we have that clip, rolled not from IMAX, but from the movie. Here it is.
The clock is running! We have liftoff!
When you watched that, can you remember where you were at that moment? You knew where you were, but what you felt?
Oh yeah, my fourth flight, and this big thing rumbled and rocketed and kept on going. So that's put me right into it.
Yeah.
And of course, the regular movie did, but I mean, with
the IMAX thing.
The IMAX thing, you're sitting there and you're surrounded by.
The spectacle is just astounding, because it is. You're sitting fairly close to the screen, wherever you're sitting in the theater. It's almost total immersion. So it's it's really enveloping. And that's also Tracy Reiner, I want to add, who's wonderful in that it's a two-shot with Kathleen Quinlan and Tracy Reiner. But the balance between sort of what you pick up from the performances and the spectacle makes it a pretty rich experience. You know, when John Glenn saw the movie in Houston, when we premiered it there in Houston, this is not the IMAX version, this is in the initial release, he came up to me and he said, it was like I was living a launch all over again, and he got this gleam in his eye, and I swear to you that he began lobbying to go on the shuttle after that. I guarantee you.
Ron was very worried about showing this premiere, the regular movie, to the NASA people, because he was afraid that, you know, they'd been so close to the program that they would criticize the movie, and it would get out in the newspapers that, hey, this was not right, that was not right. But they were really thrilled with the movie. Everybody who saw it that was associated with NASA said that's the greatest movie.
Because it captured the emotion and the feel.
Yeah, and yes, that's right. Yeah, you know, there could have been some wrong things to it, but I mean, it's so captured the idea of going to the moon and what the people felt, what the astronauts felt, what the flight controllers felt, the job they were doing. They would do it for nothing, you know, because they so enjoyed the movie, or so enjoyed the job. And Ron put that whole concept into the movie, so the audience would then get that same feeling. And he did an excellent job of editing this IMAX version to keep that going without losing the real thrust of the movie.
When my boys have laryngitis. When you look up at the moon, do you see it differently? I mean, what do you see?
Well, it's not as romantic, Charlie, as it used to be. I say, you know, was I really there? Did I really go there on Apollo 8? Did I go back on Apollo 13? Was I disappointed that I didn't land? Yes. Up until, I think, years later when I said, well, 13 was a disappointment, it was a failure. But in some aspects, it was really a triumph to the ability of people, the ground control people working with the flight crew, to get a almost certain catastrophe back to a successful recovery.
Oh, I think it's one of their most successful endeavors. Mm-hmm. The fact that they will pull that off, don't you?
I do too, and of course at the time it was sort of, I mean, it was reported, but it wasn't really understood quite the level of jeopardy that, and by the time I learned, you know, the details of the mission, and also this balance, this tremendous commitment that the mission controllers felt to get these guys back. I mean, when I was doing research, one of them explained to me, he said, you know, imagine you're a MASH surgeon, and your best buddy from high school just got dragged in off the front line and is dying. Well, you're going to do everything you can as a surgeon to keep that man alive. And that's the way we felt about these guys who were like brothers to us, who were, you know, up there in trouble. Right. And when I understood that, I began to really, you know, sort of dramatically develop the human side of the story and the emotional side of the story.
Roll tape. Take a look at this.
Okay, I got it. Damn it, that's mine. That's me. Round. A little more. Come on, baby.
That's it. Hold it. Hold
it.
Damn it. 6, 7,
That's it. Hold it.
8,
Steady.
9.
Shut down.
Wow. You said to me that this was one of the things, a technique you developed for Apollo 8. Didn't think you'd ever use it. Ripped it out of the manual. Didn't have it with you.
That's right. And all of a sudden, you know, when we were out of the corridor and had to get back in the corridor for a safe landing, they called up and said, say, Jim, do you remember back on Apollo 8 those procedures that you had in the back of the flight manual? I said, yeah, we tore them out after that. He said, you'll have to use them now. That was it.
Oh,
I should also mention James Horner's score. It's you know, he was nominated that year. It's a great score, but again, IMAX also, you know, works with the sound. We completely remixed the movie, and it's one of the things that sort of makes it you know, even more enthralling, and the action scenes, you know, more intense. It definitely, the movie flows more, and it plays more like an action adventure movie in a lot of ways. And I really, when I see it, you know, I really feel that in some way this great story kind of always was destined to be seen in this format.
What's the future for IMAX now that they've got this software? Because other movies like Gladiator have been put on IMAX, but they had that grainy quality.
Well, all they do is project the 35 millimeter or you know, onto the big screen, and it's not the same thing at all. Look, I think it's very exciting. I don't, you know, it will yet to be known what the economic, you know, ramifications are of this kind of reissue. But, you know, Brian and I were talking about it the other day. It may also be an exciting possibility to go out concurrently with just a handful of prints in these premiere kind of in these IMAX theaters at the same time that you're going out with your normal 2,000 or 3,000 screens as well. You know, that's a possibility. It's exciting as a moviegoer. You know, it just takes you that extra step toward being utterly transported that, you know, sort of I love as a moviegoer, and of course I always strive for as a director. It's you know, I think I'm really excited about it.
You went from what, The Grinch to
Beautiful Mind.
Beautiful Mind.
Right.
And where are you going from Beautiful Mind?
I'm working on a number of scripts, Charlie, and I don't know quite what I'm going to do. I'm eager to get behind the camera again. I've had a little rest, and it's time to get with it.
You take off some time after the Oscar?
I did, yeah. I did a little traveling. I was able to spend some time with the family this summer, but you know, definitely looking forward to finding something. And I have a number of stories, great stories, and it's really just a matter of kind of getting the casting together and getting the scripts.
Well, first they said you were going to do the Alamo. Then
well, we're still producing the Alamo. Brian and I are producing the Alamo.
Directing it?
Well, look, there were a number of factors. And I never committed to directing it. And by the way, it was reported that I was absolutely doing it. It was a done deal. Not really the case. Although I was very interested in the story. Did a lot of research, but I'd say if I was going to choose one sort of issue, my approach to the story was a lot tougher. I wanted to do a hard, raw, rather graphic war story. And it was going to be an expensive movie. It's reported that it all fell apart over economics. That was not the case. We wouldn't do that, you know. But I did feel that for me, right at this moment, if I was going to tell that story, I wanted to tell it as sort of truthfully and realistically as I possibly could, and that would probably yield an R rating. Disney really felt that if they were going to make that kind of investment, that with that story, they wanted to be PG-13. They wanted kids to be able to go to see the movie.
It's just a $150 million movie.
Not going to be that. It wasn't going to be that much. And John Lee Hancock is now directing, and it'll be a little less than if I made it.
Yeah.
Is Texas going to be happy?
Well, look, that's always going to be a controversial story. Some in Texas are going to be happier.
What's controversial about the story?
Oh, you know, it's controversial in that.
That's a great question.
It's controversial in that, you know, at that time, Texas belonged to Mexico. And this is not the story of America coming in and annexing Texas. That's not what was happening. But it was a Texas revolution, perhaps not supported, but encouraged by Andrew Jackson and the United States government, and perhaps not. No one quite knows. That's controversial. And you also have to look at it as a revolution. It was a number of people revolting against an established government led by General Santana.
So what's wrong with this so far? I mean, that's fine.
Well, it's all pretty interesting, but people, you know, if it's played sort of, you know, some people feel like, for example, the John Wayne version was too sort of jingoistic or something.
Sure,
I think, you know, so it's just trying to find that balance, which I was interested in. John Lee Hancock is also interested in it. He's, you know, his version of it and his screenplay is coming along great. And I think it'll be a terrific
When
movie.
you talk about the gritty of it, I mean, you're talking about a war movie that looks like Saving Private Ryan did in the first 25 minutes?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a different kind of warfare, but I wanted to have that latitude. I wanted to have that latitude.
It's the horror of war.
Yeah, whereas if you look at a studio executive in the eye, I look at a Disney and I say it's going to be PG-13, I promise you, it'll be fine, then I don't want to play any games with them. I want to mean that. And I wasn't sure, that's a vague line. And so I wanted the latitude to be able to go tell the story. And, you know, I might have been able to wrestle around and kind of fight for that and gain it. But it's not the kind of relationship that I want to have with a studio when I'm making a movie.
Involved in Apollo 13, the movie, did you get any great... Did you fall in love with the movie business?
I did for this movie. I had not known too much about movies or actors or actresses or how they were done. And so I was a little worried when the book was sold to, Imagine Entertainment. I said, I've heard a lot of, wild stories about, egos and everything like that.
Me too.
But I have to tell you quite honestly, and not just because Ron is here, but that was the greatest group of people to work with. These guys worked their tails off during that short period. I found out that the actual filming was only, 3.5 months, something like that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pre-production, a lot of post-production, but they really worked hard. But Ron and I got together one time because they asked me to be a consultant, but he said, look, it's okay to be here sometime during the filming, but it's sort of, it's sort of hard for a good actor, even like one like Tom Hanks, a superb actor, to portray somebody who's still alive and hanging on the back of the camera. And I said, you're absolutely right. I said, my tendency would be, Tom, step aside. I'll show you how this is done.
There's also that. Remember the script? You reminded me of this. That they had your nickname all over the screenplay. And it was a nickname you weren't too fond of. It was Shaky.
Shaky. Shaky.
Well, yeah, they did a lot of research. And one time, some of the guys called me Shaky, and I hated that. And so when I met Ron, he said, "Look, I read about you. You're called Shaky. If you don't call me Opie, I won't call you Shaky."
Thank you both. When this thing starts September 20th.
Yeah, in only about 22 theaters throughout the country, and it's. I hope that people will experience it for the first time if they haven't seen it.
Just seeing that makes
see it
me want to
again
see
if
the
they
movie
have.
again.
Yeah, we're happy that. And I think it was a win-win situation. Everybody was happy. NASA was happy. The people that they portrayed were happy, and I'm sure that Universal and Ron and the
Of course they are. They make some money.
Great experience.
Great to see you again.
Nice seeing you.
Congratulations again.
Okay.
Well deserved.
Thank you.
Jim,
Thank you, Charlie.
good to see you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.